Yo, what is going on, everyone? My name is Nick, or the Notorious Fantasy, and in today's video, we are going to be breaking down the double hero running back draft strategy for 2024 fantasy football. We're going to start the video off by explaining how the double hero running back draft strategy works. After that, we're going to go ahead and discuss my wide receiver targets per round from rounds 3 through 9. After that, we are going to discuss my quarterback and tight end targets overall that go from rounds 3 through 9. And then we're going to go ahead and close out the video by doing a 2024 fantasy football mock draft using the double hero running back draft strategy, so you guys can see how I would look to utilize the double hero running back draft strategy in a real fantasy football draft. Before we can get on into things, though, if you are new to the channel and you do end up enjoying today's video, please make sure that you hit that subscribe button down below. While you are down there, whether you are new to the channel or not, please make sure to leave a like on today's video. And if you want to follow me on Twitter, please do so at NotoriousFantasy. So without further ado, let's get into the 2024 double hero running back draft strategy video. So in prior years, the double hero running back draft strategy was as easy as 1, 2, 3, ABC, like the Jackson 5 song, right? You draft 2 running backs in the first 2 rounds, and then you go hammer time, Thor with the Mjolnir style on the wide receiver position, and then you get either an elite quarterback or tight end, or maybe even sometimes you're feeling a little bit frisky, and you draft both a quarterback and a tight end before you draft your running back number 3. Now, this season, I do believe with how running backs are currently falling in fantasy football drafts, you could do 2 running backs in the first 3 rounds if you wanted to. But there is definitely a risk when you do that because you may be left holding your cards with no running backs you really like in the 3rd round to be your running back 2. So I definitely would still look to, if you're going to employ this strategy, take 2 running backs in the first 2 rounds. This is going to allow you to have the best running back core in your league. And you are also going to be able to take a bunch of shots at wide receiver late after the first 2 or 3 rounds to fill the wide receiver spot. And it also allows you to avoid the dreaded running back dead zone that notoriously causes for low hit rates at the running back position. This strategy, in my opinion, works best in the vanilla league formats, meaning it is a half PPR or a full PPR league, even a standard league that starts 1 quarterback, 2 running backs, 2 wide receivers, a tight end, flex. Typically, you got a kicker, a defense, and 5 bench spots, but the kicker and defense don't really mean anything for any of these draft strategy videos. Now, if you are in a league that maybe starts 1 quarterback, 2 running backs, 3 wide receivers, a tight end, and a flex, or maybe it's a 1 quarterback, 2 running backs, 2 wide receivers, a tight end, and 2 flex spots, those are the kind of leagues where you kind of want to stay away from this strategy. Now, any strategy could work in any draft. You can win your league drafting a kicker in the first round, but obviously that is going to decrease your chances. So I believe in the more typical 1 quarterback, 2 running back, 2 wide receivers, 1 tight end, and 1 flex league is the best league setup for you to go ahead and do double hero running back, because in those 3 wide receiver start or 2 wide receivers and 2 flex start leagues, you can play 4 receivers at all times, and in half PPR, full PPR, that is going to give you a greater edge, and it is also going to give you less risk in terms of injuries because the running backs get injured at a higher clip. Again, I do really like this strategy because this was a strategy in the past that everyone and their mother was using. That's why you would sometimes see 14 running backs come off of the board in the first 2 rounds, 15, 16 running backs, because everyone was going for the 1-2 punch at the running back position early. Now, everyone is doing the exact opposite. Everyone is doubling down on the wide receiver position early, which allows you to potentially get a combo like Bijan Robinson and Jonathan Taylor in the first 2 rounds of your draft. This can be done from any pick in the draft, from pick 1 all the way up until pick number 12. So hopefully that gave you guys a good picture of how the double hero running back draft strategy works. Now we're going to go ahead and get on into my round by round wide receiver targets. So you draft those 2 running backs right off the rip. Here are the wide receivers that I am going to look to target. So we'll start here in round number 3, the round 3 wide receivers based upon aggregate ADP from ESPN Sleeper, MFL, NFFC, and Fantrax have Mike Evans, Nico Collins, Stephon Diggs, Deebo Samuel, Jalen Waddle, and DJ Moore, all going in the 3rd round in that order. Now, for me, inside of round number 3, the wide receivers that I like are DJ Moore, Nico Collins, Mike Evans, and Jalen Waddle in that order. That is the order in which I have these wide receivers ranked. I like DJ Moore a ton because I think the Bears offense is going to be very good. They just paid DJ Moore, and DJ Moore is the number 1 receiver on their team who was a top 10 wide receiver last year. Nico Collins, I like him because I think he's the number 1 wide receiver on an offense that I expect to be fantastic. Mike Evans is the definition of consistency, and in a draft like this, Mike Evans would be a very consistent wide receiver 1 for you. And then Jalen Waddle. Now, he is a little bit more boom or bust week in and week out, but I do think there will be a lot more consistency with Jalen Waddle this season compared to last season. In round number 4, based upon ADP, we got Michael Pittman Jr., Malik Neighbors, Cooper Kupp, DK Metcalf, as well as Devontae Smith. My targets in this round are Cooper Kupp as well as Malik Neighbors, but if I am being honest, I would be fine with any of them. I just like Cooper Kupp and Malik Neighbors the most. There's been a lot of drumbeat out of the LA Rams camp, basically getting down on their knees and giving the Gawk Gawk 9000 special to Cooper Kupp. I've been hyping up Cooper Kupp all offseason. People didn't believe me, but now it seems like everyone and their mother loves Cooper Kupp. Malik Neighbors is high risk, high reward, in my opinion. He is very much, in a way, chained to Daniel Jones. If Daniel Jones goes out there and plays like a steaming pile of dog shit like he did last season, then Malik Neighbors will probably end up as a bust. But if Daniel Jones is able to keep his head above water, Malik Neighbors is an amazing talent that will succeed in this scenario. Metcalf, Smith, Pittman Jr., I am fine drafting those guys as well. I just prefer the others. Round 5, based upon aggregate ADP, is Zay Flowers, Tank Dell, George Pickens, T. Higgins, Amari Cooper, and Keenan Allen. Funny enough, the only receiver I don't like in this range is Keenan Allen. Tank Dell, Zay Flowers, George Pickens, Amari Cooper, and T. Higgins would be the order of my favorite wide receivers in this round. To me, seems like a lot of people are nervous about Tank Dell ever since Stephon Diggs came in town, but everything I've heard from the mouth of CJ Stroud will tell you that CJ Stroud loves Tank Dell, and this guy has weekly 25-plus point upside. Zay Flowers had a pretty rookie year, but in a run-heavy offense as a rookie, I thought he did very well. Started to really heat up towards the end of last season. I understand that he fumbled away the AFC Championship game up against the Chiefs, but ultimately, I won't hate him too much for that. Besides that, though, in that game, he was going crazy. I think Zay Flowers is the clear number 1 target on this team. George Pickens, I think, will be great, whether it is Justin Fields or Russell Wilson under center, because now he is the clear-cut wide receiver 1 on the Pittsburgh Steelers, which wasn't the case with Deontay Johnson there. Plus, there is really no competition around him unless, of course, like Brandon Ayuk gets traded there, which would be just my luck after I've already drafted George Pickens a bunch on Underdog. Amari Cooper, I like because a lot of people don't really like Deshaun Watson, and rightfully so. He wasn't really all that good last season, but if you look at Amari Cooper's numbers extrapolated to a 17-game sample size from all the games Deshaun Watson played with Amari Cooper, he is a very solid value in the 5th round. And T. Higgins has a down year last year, and it seems like everyone's just writing him off, but I don't think T. Higgins is going to write back Geno Smith style, and he is going to bounce back in a big way assuming Joe Shiesty can stay healthy. Round 6, based upon ADP, is Christian Kirk, Terry McLaurin, Rome Odunze, Rashee Rice, the best driver in the NFL, as well as Jaden Riley Reed. The guys I like in order are Christian Kirk, Jaden Reed, Rome Odunze, and Terry McLaurin. For me, just the unknown of Rashee Rice makes me want to stay away from him right now. Now, if we knew for sure he was going to get a 4-game suspension, or a 6-game suspension, or an 8-game, a 10-game suspension, or maybe they throw the fucking book at him, backhand him Will Smith style, and he's suspended for the whole season, then we will, once we know that, I can accurately rank him. As of right now, I'm kind of just staying away. In a redraft league, in best ball, I think it's fine to draft him, but in redraft, I kind of want to know what the suspension is going to be before I pull the trigger. Love Christian Kirk as the wide receiver 1 in Jacksonville. I think the Jaguars are a very underrated offense. There are a lot of people panicking about Jaden Reed because in the family night, Jaden Reed wasn't one of the top 2 in terms of route participation, but I'm not going to sit here and get my panties in a bunch over a family night game. Rome Odunze, love Rome Odunze. I think he's going to be the number 2 receiver in Chicago behind Wiki DJ Moore. I think he will eventually surpass Keenan Allen, and the guy's talent is incredible. You watch his college tape, and it'll make you salivate. Terry McLaurin, while the guy did try to do a backflip at media day and absolutely ate shit, Terry McLaurin is still the clear head honcho, head of the table. Shout out Roman Reigns as the number 1 receiver on this team. And I think Jaden Daniels could fully unlock his potential. But we've been saying that for years. So maybe we're in for some disappointment with Terry McLaurin, as per usual. In round 7, based upon ADP, we got another world-renowned driver, Jordan Addison, followed by Chris Godwin, Xavier Worthy, Calvin Ridley, and Hollywood Brown. We got the other 2 wide receivers on the Chiefs in this round, Rashee Rice in the 6th round. In terms of the guys that I like here, Chris Godwin, I gave him the Suka Lamink, the Hawk Tua special in a video a couple of days ago, talking about my favorite mid-round targets. Chris Godwin, unsuccessful last season, but that was due to his slot usage. The team wants to greatly increase his slot usage percentage, which is why he was so successful throughout his career. Calvin Ridley, with DeAndre Hopkins banged up, seems like a great steal, in my opinion, even though he stole all your lunch money last season. Hollywood Brown, strictly because I feel as though Rashee Rice is going to get that suspension. I think Hollywood could benefit from that. Same thing goes with Xavier Worthy. Both guys with very low floors, but very high ceilings game in and game out, and especially in plus matchups where the Chiefs are hitting defenses with the 619 Rey Mysterio. Those are the kind of guys you want on your team. In round number 8, based upon aggregate ADP, we start to see the wide receivers lessen and lessen, where people are taking their quarterbacks, their tight ends, and this is where a lot of people start spamming running backs because running backs are falling in drafts. So round number 8, aggregate ADP wide receivers are Ladd McConkey, DeAndre Hopkins, Deontay Johnson, as well as Keon Coleman. And I've caught rookie fever in a way because now I really like Keon Coleman. I have seen so many videos of him at training camp, basically putting his nuts on the forehead of the defense. Now, could that be Fugazi, Awazi, Awuzie come the regular season? 100%. But right now, I'm buying what they're selling because whoever the number 1 receiver is in Buffalo could feast in a huge way. Thanksgiving feast, turducken style. And I like Deontay Johnson. I like Deontay Johnson more than Keon Coleman because I view him as a lot safer. And I've also seen some Bryce Young propaganda that would show you that maybe he was just held back by the coaching staff. Round number 9, based upon aggregate ADP, Brian Thomas Jr. of the Jacksonville Jaguars, followed by Jackson Smith-Njigba of the Seattle Seahawks, and Christian Watson. The only guy left off the list here is going to be Brian Thomas Jr. because I just don't feel as though in his rookie year in this Jaguars offense, he's really going to elevate himself to being a huge part of the offense. Now, maybe Evan Ingram starts to fall off. Maybe ETN starts gobbling less targets. But with Gabe Davis there, I just don't really feel like I want to be investing heavily in Brian Thomas Jr. Now, again, I get why you might because of his talent level from LSU. But for me, JSN, Christian Watson, the clear 2 targets here. A lot of hype for Christian Watson coming out now. I've been a big fan of Christian Watson ever since his rookie breakout campaign with Aaron Rodgers. A lot of talk about him being the number one receiver there. And I think if you can get the number one receiver in Green Bay, that is going to pay off dividends because of how talented Jordan Love Me Tender, Love Me Sweet is. And then Jackson Smith-Njigba, who should be the number 2 target there behind DK Metcalf. Geno Smith appears to be fine, even though there was some worries and there was some talk about how they need to scan this and do all this again. I'm as much of a doctor as Johnny Sins, so I don't know exactly how all that shit works, but every report was like, okay, seems like he's going to be okay. So that's very promising because when you initially hear, oh, he's got to get scanned, they got to put him in some machine, right? It doesn't sound the best. So now we move on to my quarterback targets from rounds 3 through 9. So if you're snagging a quarterback in this range, the guy that I am looking at, or the guys that I'm looking at, are Jalen Hurts. He was the quarterback 1 last season. I think he could easily be the quarterback 1 yet again. In 2024, Jalen Hurts is incredibly talented. They're still going to be pushing a decent amount. And he has great wide receivers in A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith, also has Dallas Goedert. So I think Jalen Hurts is a pretty safe bet to be a top 3 guy. Lamar Jackson could easily sneak into the top 3 as well with how ferocious this Ravens attack is and with how good of a runner he is. Speaking of running, we got 3 rushing quarterbacks in a row with Anthony Richardson. I have sung the praises. I have been singing opera like Junior in The Sopranos for Anthony Richardson. Someone in the comment section called him Anthony Injured Son, which I thought was kind of funny, but we do not root for injuries when healthy. This guy was an absolute fucking menace. If he could play for a majority of this season, he will be a league winner. Kyler Murray in round 7. We're staying with the running guys. A lot of people don't like Kyler Murray because he didn't play the best last year. Well, guess what? He was coming off of a very serious injury. Prior to that, this guy was an amazing fantasy football quarterback due to the rushing upside. And now guess what? He's got Marvin Harrison, Trey McBride. This is a quarterback that is going to succeed at ADP. And round 8, we got Jordan Love. I have been fondling the metaphorical testes of the Green Bay Packers offense because of how much I love Jordan Love. The team paid Jordan Love a hefty bag for a reason, and I think Jordan Love could end up as a top 5 quarterback, but he doesn't have the rushing upside the other guys have. In terms of tight ends in this range, we got Mark Andrews, Dalton Kincaid, Kyle Pitts, and Jake Ferguson. Mark Andrews has a down year because he was hurt. Still one of the best tight ends in the National Football League. You could argue he is a top 3 tight end in the NFL, and he comes off the board in fantasy football outside of the top 3 at the tight end position, and he should be the clear number 2 target behind Zay Flowers and a big red zone threat. At number 2, Dalton Kincaid going in round number 5. I do think Keon Coleman could end up as the wide receiver 1, but I also think Dalton Kincaid could end up with the most targets on the team. Sure, they're going to use Dawson Knox, and Dawson Knox might steal a touchdown or 2, but I do think that Dalton Kincaid has 7+ touchdown upside. Kyle Pitts, I know we've drafted him, and then we've drafted him again, and we've drafted him again, and he basically bends us over the table without the use of lube every single season. But this season, it feels a little bit different without Arthur Smith and with a quarterback in Kirk Cousins who's actually good. And then to close out at the tight end position before we get on into the mock draft, we got Fergalicious Jake Ferguson of the Dallas Cowboys coming off the board in round number 8. I know it says Baltimore on the screen, but that's meant to be a D. They're kind of near each other on the keyboard, but not really. So my intern really fucked that one up, but there is no intern. It's just a joke. But Jake Ferguson is a very solid player. I'm not going to go ahead and say he's one of the best tight ends in the NFL, but he's a very productive player, a red zone threat on the Dallas Cowboys, who don't really have a lot of targets outside of CeeDee Lamb. So Jake Ferguson is kind of just destined to get a bunch of targets, and if he scores a decent amount of touchdowns, he could end up inside of the top 3, and I think he's going to be very reliable weekly. So now that we've broken down the draft strategy, how the double hero running back draft strategy works, and then we talked about my wide receiver targets, my quarterback targets, and my tight end targets, we are now going to get into a mock draft where I show you guys how to utilize the double hero running back draft strategy for the 2024 fantasy football season. All right, we moved on over to the Fantasy Pros Draft Wizard. This double hero running back draft strategy mock is going to be done from the 12th overall spot in a 12-team PPR league. Roster positions are 1 quarterback, 2 running backs, 2 wide receivers, a tight end, flex kicker, defense, and 5 bench spots. Again, like I said off the rip of the video, the 1 quarterback, 2 running backs, 2 wide receivers, tight end, and flex setup is the best. Now, you can do this in a 3 wide receiver or 2 flex league, but in my opinion, in those leagues, you need to be hammering the wide receiver position early if it's a half PPR or a full PPR league, which is what a majority of people play in. So the 2 running back, 2 wide receiver, and flex roster position league setup to me is the best for the double hero running back draft strategy. We're going to be drafting up against ESPN and Sleeper ADP. From the 12th overall spot, a majority of times you are basically locked in to being able to select both Saquon Barkley and Jonathan Taylor. Now, that does not end up happening in this draft because the draft begins McCaffrey, Lamb, Hill, Breece Hall, Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Bijan Robinson, A.J. Brown, Saquon Barkley, and Puka Nacua. So we're going to be able to get Jahmyr Gibbs at this pick. If Jahmyr Gibbs wasn't available, I would have been fine going with Saquon Barkley and Jonathan Taylor there. Now, if we are taking our mind out of this draft, like, hey, we're just going to draft normally, I would probably take Garrett Wilson with this pick, but I'd be considering both Jahmyr Gibbs and Jonathan Taylor as well. A lot of people seem to be a little bit nervous about Jahmyr Gibbs, not because of his skill set, but because of the fact that David Montgomery is still there. And sure, it's going to be frustrating when Jahmyr Gibbs runs 99 yards or 98 yards, falls over on the 1-yard line, and then David Montgomery vultures him. But at the end of the day, this is a guy going into his 2nd year, which is when we typically see running backs take that humongous leap. He is in one of the best offenses in the NFL, and we'll be seeing all of the targets because David Montgomery is not the pass-catching back on the team, and then we're going to double up with Jonathan Taylor here. Another running back that people seem scared of. More people seem scared of Jonathan Taylor, though, compared to Jahmyr Gibbs. Jonathan Taylor hasn't been the best recently, but when Jonathan Taylor has been healthy, he looks like one of the best running backs in the NFL. He is on an offense with Shane Steichen, who was able to produce elite quarterback play with elite running back play in Philadelphia, and I think the exact same thing will be replicated in Indianapolis. I get that him and Anthony Richardson didn't really play together, but Anthony Richardson had Zach Moss absolutely eating. He was dominating. So imagine what Jonathan Taylor is going to do in Indianapolis. When this guy's healthy, you could argue he is a top 3 or maybe even the best running back in the NFL. A couple of years ago, everyone was just clamoring for Jonathan Taylor. And after last season, when Jim Irsay was too busy whale watching to pay Jonathan Taylor in time, and then he was hurt, maybe he wasn't hurt, who actually knows, but Jonathan Taylor is still legit in my opinion. After JT, Garrett Wilson, Kyron Williams, Marvin Harrison Jr., Derrick Henry, Devontae Adams, Travis Kelce, Drake London, Isaiah Pacheco, Sam Laporta, Chris Olave, Travis Etienne, Devon Achane, Josh Allen, Brandon Ayuk, Michael Pittman, Josh Jacobs, Patrick Mahomes, Rashad White, Jalen Hurts, James Cook, Mike Evans, and Joe Mixon. So we won't be able to get Jalen Hurts with this pick, but that is a-okay to me. It is now time to hammer the wide receiver position. Best guys available: Jalen Waddle, Nico Collins, DJ Moore, Trey McBride still available, who I like. Same thing goes with Mark Andrews. We are going to go ahead and go double wide receiver here, though. Rip the Band-Aid off quickly. And we are going to go with Nico Collins and DJ Moore. Now, I like Jalen Waddle a ton as well, but I do have Nico and DJ Moore ranked ahead of him. Nico Collins in Houston, to me, feels like a guy that people are just going to get nervous about because of the wide receiver Stephon Diggs showing up, and people are going to think that now Nico Collins isn't going to be the guy. Look at his efficiency stats last season. He was one of the most efficient wide receivers in the NFL. He is a quarterback in CJ Stroud that is, in my opinion, one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL who loves to throw the ball to him. Don't overthink on Nico Collins. The same thing, people are going to overthink DJ Moore because they bring in Keenan Allen and Rome Odunze. DJ Moore was putting up humongous numbers with Tyson Bagent and Justin Fields, and Caleb Williams is levels above those guys. So I like DJ Moore a ton. I think that both Nico Collins and DJ Moore could easily be top 12 wide receivers. And if that ends up happening, where I have 2 running backs that any given week could be the running back 1 in Jahmyr Gibbs and Jonathan Taylor, I could get a week where Jahmyr Gibbs is the 1, Jonathan Taylor is number 2. You are in such a good position to succeed with this double hero running back strategy. And now you're avoiding guys like Kenneth Walker, who just feels disgusting to me to select in the 4th round. I'm a big fan of Alvin Kamara, so I won't shit on him too much, but Alvin Kamara is getting a little bit older, right? In the 4th round, it doesn't necessarily feel super erratic downstairs, right, when you go ahead and select him. Now we are going to go ahead and go with a wide receiver here, and then we are going to go ahead and get a quarterback. I would have loved to get Anthony Richardson here at the 5.12, but obviously things don't go our way. Dalton Kincaid, Pitts, McBride, Andrews, all off of the board as well. Best receivers available: Amari Cooper, Christian Kirk, George Pickens. I did rank them earlier. They're all in a similar range, though, to me, right? I ranked them. If I rank them tomorrow, the ranking might be slightly different, right? They are all very, very close in my mind. I am going to go ahead and go with George Pickens here. Again, assuming, and we all know what assuming means. It makes an ass out of you and me, right? Because maybe Brandon Ayuk shows up there tomorrow and becomes the #1 receiver, which would happen, I think, if he showed up to Pittsburgh. But I don't really still see that as being the most likely scenario. So we're going to go ahead and get George Pickens. George Pickens is a guy that has been bogged down by the quarterback play. Like, if he just had halfway decent quarterback play last season, we would be talking about George Pickens as like a top 4 round draft pick, but he just doesn't go that high because he was sabotaged by the quarterback position last season. So our team so far, we got Jahmyr Gibbs, Jonathan Taylor, Nico Collins, DJ Moore, and George Pickens. Now, by the time things come back, it is incredibly unlikely that Kyler Murray comes back to us. Now, we could be able to get Jordan Love, but you never know. Now, breaking down the quarterback draft strategy from draft to draft is going to be so different. In some leagues, you might have a guy that drafts Mahomes with the 3rd overall pick because Mahomes is the best quarterback in the NFL, which makes logical sense, but doesn't actually make sense if you understand fantasy football. Or there's a guy that takes Josh Allen in the 1st round or the 2nd round, right? You might just see a quarterback run in the 3rd round where Josh Allen goes, and then the next guy is like, oh my gosh, I need to get my quarterback. Then Hurts goes, and then Mahomes goes, and then Lamar Jackson, and then Stroud, and then you end up seeing the 4th round, the guys get pushed up even further, and people are running around like chickens with their head cut off. That happens at quarterback and tight end, which makes them very unpredictable positions in fantasy football drafts, especially in more casual leagues, right? If you're drafting with your friends from your office, you're drafting with Jim and Pam, you know, Michael Scott, all those guys, or you're drafting with your high school buddies that might have a couple screws loose, you know. Those are the kind of people that might be drafting a little bit crazy. Now, if you're with all the sharp people, the quarterbacks will fall, the tight ends will fall, but not everyone drafts with fucking Matthew Berry and myself or something like that. So we're going to go ahead here and get Kyler Murray because I know damn well he is not coming back to me in the next round. Now, the best decision might technically be to get that 4th wide receiver, right? I get on paper Nico Collins, DJ Moore, George Pickens are more risky to some people. I'm not really worried about them. So maybe you shore things up with a Christian Kirk or an Amari Cooper. But I do like the wide receivers going in the next couple of rounds. So I feel pretty comfortable in drafting Kyler Murray in this scenario due to his immense amount of rushing upside and due to the fact that, again, this is a dude that is criminally underrated just because he's the height of 50 Cent's alter ego, 25 Cent. He's the same height as Wee Man. Doesn't mean that the guy can't play ball. The addition of Marvin Harrison Jr. is absolutely humongous for the upside of Kyler Murray. I think that Kyler Murray is in a great scenario. Trey McBride as well. And again, the rushing upside is crazy. He could lead the NFL in rushing at the quarterback position. He could score a bunch of touchdowns as well. And again, when Kyler has been healthy, he has been a force to be reckoned with for fantasy football. So we see Burrow go, Dak go. So maybe, just maybe, we would have been able to go ahead and get Kyler in the 7th. But again, that's just a wet dream. That's just wishful thinking. Nick Chubb going in the 7th round. Again, I'm a Nick Chubb fanatic. I've been shouting from the mountaintops like the Ricola Man or like fucking a Yeti, the Abominable Snowman or something about 9-inch Nicholas Chubb for years, but coming off that serious injury in the 7th round, that's a little bit crazy. So we could have gotten Jordan Love, but now in the 7th round, we can get Jake Ferguson. Now, it's probably going to consider that pick to be a reach. What is Jake Ferguson's ADP? Tight end 10 off of the board. Where's Jake Ferguson over here? I'm clearly blind because he's just going to be like right here. Yeah, pick 93. So it'll technically be a reach when I take him the next round, but I don't give a bullocks, right? I don't really care about that. I'm going to take him because I like him a lot, and I view the 8th round at the end of the 7th round as a fine time to take him again. He could fall as far as like the 9th or the 10th round if your room is a little bit less optimistic on the tight end position early. So we're going to go ahead and go wide receiver here. If D-Hop wasn't injured, I'd be a little bit more bullish on him, but we're going to go ahead and go. The question here is, do we want upside or safety? Because I think Deontay Johnson is like wrapping that condom around your team. I get that on paper, Deontay Johnson is the most safe guy on earth, right? Bryce Young throwing him the ball. But I think he's going to be the clear number 1 alpha receiver in Carolina. And we have seen how well that paid off with Big Ben. It's just like George Pickens, like Deontay Johnson was basically rammed in the ass by the quarterback play there. So JSN, a little bit more upside though. I just think JSN's a way better player than Deontay Johnson, but Deontay's going to be the number 1. JSN's clearly going to be the number 2. Jordan Addison, he could also serve a lengthy suspension. I like Hollywood as well for that weekly upside. And since we do take Deontay Johnson a bunch, I'm going to go ahead and get Hollywood here. We're going to get the old school Kyler Murray to Hollywood Brown stack that no longer obviously works because they're on 2 different teams. But Hollywood Brown, again, I've probably said the word underrated in this video a million different times. People are like, Nick, not all these guys are underrated, you stupid cocksucker, right? But Hollywood Brown is a guy that is going to be able to get open deep down the field for Patrick Mahomes. They have a lot of guys, so there are a lot of mouths to feed, but the upside is very significant when you can get a guy that could be the wide receiver 1 any given week on a Patrick Mahomes offense that could score 20-plus points. So I'm a big fan of Hollywood Brown as an upside swing. Again, Deontay Johnson significantly safer, and I think even JSN would be a safer projection compared to Hollywood Brown. But now we're going to go ahead and go with Fergalicious Jake Ferguson again. The Dallas Cowboys should be one of the most high-scoring offenses in the NFL. They are a team quarterbacked by Dak Prescott, who is another guy that just gets shit on for really no reason, despite the fact that he is a very talented quarterback. I get that he chokes it all away in the playoffs, but during the regular season, this guy is really good. Jake Ferguson, again, besides CeeDee Lamb, they have old bastard Brandon Cooks, who's walking around with a cane like he's Daredevil. And then they have Jalen Tolbert, who hasn't really done much in the NFL. And Jake Ferguson's also a big boy who's a very solid red zone target. So now you could potentially draft your running back 3, but I'm probably just going to draft more receivers here since we already have a quarterback in Kyler Murray and we already have our tight end. We're not drafting 2 quarterbacks or 2 tight ends. Now, some of you guys might like to do that because you don't have to worry about scavenging through the waiver wire trying to find your quarterback or tight end on bye week. But my team is going to look so drastically different by week 11 when Kyler is on bye, by week 7 when Jake Ferguson is on bye, that I'm not really trying to just have 2 guys burning a hole in my pocket, chilling on the bench, right? Because that backup tight end could stop you from picking up a guy like Kyron Williams last year, picking up the Devin 2 Chains, picking up if for some godforsaken reason someone didn't draft Raheem Mostert or something, right? Picking up that stud, that Amon-Ra St. Brown from a couple of years ago who can win you your league straight up. And then people are just have like another tight end or 2 defenses sitting on their bench. You don't need to do that. Obviously, if something happens to Kyler, knock on wood, we don't root for injuries, you have to go pick someone up, or when they're on bye, you have to pick someone up. But worry about it when the time comes. So JSN falls back to us. That is as no-brainer as it gets. If he wasn't there, I would have went with Cortland Sutton. JSN is a guy that in his rookie year was a swing and a miss. And it wasn't just a swing and a miss and like, yeah, almost hit it, right? Oh, so close. This was a swing. Like I swung and the fucking ball didn't even come out yet. Or the ball was already in the catcher's mitt. But this year with a new head coach, new look, Mike McDonald, old McDonald had a farm. I think that JSN is going to be able to play a lot better. Remember that game against Dallas last year when they heavily utilized him? The guy looked like he might be better talent than DK Metcalf. Now, I'm not going to go out and say that blatantly, but this guy really is good. As long as Geno Smith plays a little bit better than last season, I think that JSN is in a very good position. So now I'm going to draft my running back 3 because after the Chase Brown, Jerome Ford, to me, it starts to get a little bit more dicey. Now, I do like guys in that range, the Blake Corum, the Jaleel McLaughlin, the Rico Dowdle, the J.K. Dobbins, the Khalil Herbert, right? I like those guys, the Elijah Mitchell. But I'm not going to sit here and tell you that I feel more confident in those guys than I do in a Jerome Ford, who could be the lead running back the whole fucking season for the Cleveland Browns. Now, what I will tell you is Chubb could come back by like week 5 and throw a wrench into things enough to where you wouldn't love Jerome Ford. But I think Chase Brown could take over and fend Zach Moss off, right? I think it's going to be a 1A, 1B scenario, but there is that scenario where Moss gets hurt or, maybe Moss just doesn't play as well and Chase Brown's getting the hype up special by his teammates. Seems like Chase Brown could end up being the number 1 running back there a few weeks in. And that's the guy I'd prefer compared to the early season hammer because you're never playing Jerome Ford, really, right? Unless Jerome Ford's like, he's ripping off 18 points a game and it's like, oh my God, I got to get Jerome Ford in instead of George Pickens or whoever's my flex. I like Chase Brown for more of the upside to where he could be like that late season league winner. And that's what you're kind of targeting when you have 2 running backs that you drafted super early. You don't necessarily need the safest. Like, you don't need Chuba Hubbard for that safe early round, easy early season, I should say, not early round, but that early season projection, right? Because Jonathan Brooks is hurt. He's not playing. And then, oh, look, you can get Chuba Hubbard getting you 12 points a week, right? That's all fine and dandy. But it's not all fine and dandy because we drafted Jahmyr Gibbs, Jonathan Taylor, right? If you went 0 running back, right, you're in a 3 receiver, 2 flex draft, right? You're hammering wide receiver. You got your lead quarterback. You got your lead tight end. And now you're chilling around 10 and you're like, you know what? I just want to have a guy that's going to get me 10 points. Draft Chuba Hubbard because he can do that, right? But in this scenario, we already have the points. We already have the Gibbs, the Jonathan Taylor. Let's take a guy with upside that could potentially be a weekly flex option or a guy that in positive matchups we are excited to start. And something that I haven't really mentioned yet, and I'm going to mention in the final draft strategy video I make at the end of August, don't look at the bye weeks. They don't really matter at all. Now, if you're going to draft 2 quarterbacks, don't draft 2 quarterbacks on the same bye week. Don't draft 2 tight ends on the same bye week. Say if you drafted 3 running backs in bye week 14. Bye week number 14, some of those guys are in the fucking hospital. Some of those guys might never play football again. Like crazy things happen, guys get traded. So don't worry too much about the bye weeks. I think that's one of the things that newer fantasy football players get very, very wrong. So we have our final pick here, and we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 receivers, 3 running backs. I think the best bet here would be just going with another running back. And we're going to go with Rico Dowdle. Again, you want the 10 points, go with Chuba Hubbard. But Rico Dowdle, let's be honest, let's call a spade a spade. I like Zeke at ADP because he's going late, and I think he'll be the lead back on the Dallas Cowboys. But if Rico Dowdle outperformed Zeke, would anyone be surprised? The answer to that is no. No one is going to be surprised for that. So we're going to close our bench off here with a wide receiver. And looking at the wide receivers available, Joshua Palmer, Josh Downs, Rashid Shaheed, Brandon Cooks. Now, again, people say that they're not confident in Collins, DJ Moore, George Pickens, Tyler Brown, JSN, right? Because people like to fucking debate about everything. People just hate agreeing with me or anyone, right? No one in the comment section is like, Nick, you're a genius. I agree with everything. Because everyone has their own opinion, which, again, I'm not trying to be rude about. I'm glad that you guys disagree, right? It brings a conversation to be had. Maybe you sway me. Maybe I sway you. If not, it's okay because, again, you're going to be wrong about things. I'm going to be wrong about things. That's just how life goes, and that's how fantasy football goes especially, right? If I knew everything, if I was like in Back to the Future with the almanac, right, the sports almanac, I wouldn't even tell you guys everything that was the truth if that was the case because then you guys would think I'm from the future or something. It would blow my spot, but I'm not from the future. I am from 1999, May 26th, that's when I was born. So 25 years old, I'm getting old. But again, we're trying to just zoom through this mock draft. I'm just talking about random stuff for no reason. So I'm confident in these guys. So we're just hunting for the fences here at wide receiver. We're not going to go with the safe bet, which I think would be Joshua Palmer. We are just going to swing our metaphorical keen down here. And we're going to go ahead and go with Jalen Polk. I've seen some very positive things out of training camp for the Patriots on Jalen Polk. Now, maybe in year number 1, he's just not that guy, pal, and it's Demario Douglas. I love Demario Douglas. But this time, we'll go with a rookie in Jalen Polk. Again, if you wanted to take the safer bet, go ahead. And it's going to tell us, wee woo, alert, you can't draft a bye week 14 wide receiver because Nico Collins is week 14, even though no one else is. That's just a stupid design, in my opinion. So now we're going to go ahead and have to get our kicker and our defense. First up, we're getting our kicker. We're going to go ahead and get Tyler Bass, Pro Shops, kicker of the Buffalo Bills. Maybe their offense isn't as effective without Stephon Diggs, and maybe they're kicking a little bit more. I guess that's our hope when we draft Tyler Bass. And then for our defense, you want to draft a defense that is going up against a not-so-hot opponent in week number 1. Their actual defense doesn't really matter too much to me, right? I understand that the Steelers are technically, on this screen, they are the best defense on paper, in my opinion. When you compare all these defenses, they would be number one, the tribal chief here. But that's not what matters, because if they're playing up against a tough defense or tough offense in week number 1, then you might just get Cleveland steamered. Even though TJ Watt gets 3 sacks, if they run up the score on you, you're probably finished. So right now, some of my favorite defenses would be the Panthers going up against the Saints. I also like the Saints going up against the Panthers. I probably like them a little bit more. The Vikings going up against the Giants, and the Giants going up against the Vikings. The Bengals up against the Patriots. The Steelers could be a little bit sneaky week 1 against the Falcons, because maybe Kirk Cousins isn't very well connected with the team. So we'll go with the Steelers here. So I guess we made kind of a stupid argument before, but it was more of a hypothetical argument. So up against Kirk Cousins again, do I love it? No, but I think the Steelers defense is good enough to have a good game there. The best example is the Jets going up against the 49ers, or the 49ers against the Jets, both great defenses, but that could end up being a higher scoring game. So to recap our team, we started the draft off with Jahmyr Gibbs, followed by Jonathan Taylor. Then we went Nico Collins, DJ Moore, George Pickens, Kyler Murray, and then I think that was the correct order. Yep, Kyler Murray, Hollywood Brown, Jake Ferguson, JSN, Chase Brown, Rico Dowdle, Jalen Polk, Tyler Bass, and the Steelers defense. So our starting lineup would be Kyler Murray, Jahmyr Gibbs, Jonathan Taylor, Nico Collins, DJ Moore, George Pickens, Jake Ferguson, and then our kicker and our defense. So let me know what you guys thought down below in the comment section about this draft strategy. Do you want to zig while people are zagging, or are you just going to go calm, cool, and collected, do the hero running back, which again, I think hero running back is the best draft strategy, but the double hero running back could work as well. Any strategy could work. Again, you could draft fucking Justin Tucker in the first round and still win your league. So let me know what you guys thought down below in the comments. Do you think I executed it well in my mock draft? Do you love it? Do you hate it? Check out one of the videos on your screen if you haven't seen it already. I love you guys all so much. Hope you have a great one. And as always, good boy.